This deep dive into Warhammer 40k's character rules is sponsored by the Magnet Baron. Big thanks to them for supporting the channel. You can check them out at themagnetbaron.com. What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and today we're talking about characters, deep diving into another set of mechanics in Warhammer 40k's 10th edition. Characters are probably the most reworked single part of Warhammer 40k in the most recent edition, and can be very complex. So today, in this video, we're going to be breaking down a lot of the nuanced rules around character units, bodyguard units, and attached units, lone operatives, and even other effects that are identical to the lone operative mechanic on non-character units. As always with these rules videos, I'm going to be discussing the rules as they are currently written within the Warhammer 40k core rules and the rules commentary at the time of recording. These rules might change in the future, and if there are rules changes, I'll do my best to update that in the comment section down below, so go jump down there if you want to see if any of these rules have been updated since this video got posted. And with that, let's dive in. And the first thing we're going to talk about is some basic information about the character keyword. While many keywords in Warhammer 40k have a lot of rules, connotations, and baggage associated with them, the only thing that the character keyword does by itself is make a model eligible to receive enhancements. These are paid upgrades that cost you points and are exclusive to characters. You can only take one of each in an army, up to 3 enhancements over the entirety of the army, and they are unlocked by your detachment. Characters can also be selected to be your army's warlord, and you must have a character in your army to be the warlord. It doesn't have any other abilities attached to it. However, some armies can get bonuses for attacking or destroying your warlord, and some models get bonuses for being the army's warlord. Epic heroes are a type of character that can't be given enhancements, and because they are usually representing a single named character within the universe, are exclusive. You can only have one of each epic hero type in your army. So while you can have multiple epic heroes, you can take Robuta Gilliman and Marneus Calgar next to each other, you can't take 2 Robuta Gillimans or 2 Marneus Calgars. Now, those are basically all the rules that the character keyword unlocks by itself. However, its association with other abilities often gives it some unique mechanics. Are you gearing up for Warhammer 40k's 10th edition, but unsure of what war gear you want your units to be equipped with? With a new rule set for the game comes a ton of new challenges, and it's hard to be prepared for everything. You've got new opposing armies to play against, new enemy units to contend with, and a quickly changing metagame. Maybe you're worried about erratas impacting your models or the loadouts you've assembled them with. Well, I have an easy solution for you, and that is magnets. And the easiest way to access that easy solution is the Magnet Baron, your one-stop shop for all of your model modularity needs. Modularity needs. Nailed it. The Magnet Baron is the best place to go to get your armies ready for playing within the new edition. They offer magnetization sets for a wide variety of Warhammer 40k model kits that includes the specific components that you need to magnetize them and allow them to build in any loadout available. So your units can remain flexible without having to break the bank buying additional bits or extra models. Not only that, but the Magnet Baron also includes a wide variety of other useful gaming accessories, including sturdy flight stands that don't snap as soon as you take them out of the box, convenient movement trays for moving large units around, as well as a wide variety of hobby magnets in a frankly ridiculous selection of shapes and sizes. So you can modulate any bit for any model in any part of your collection. So check them out at themagnetbaron.com to get your army ready for the new edition of Warhammer 40k and remain flexible as the game develops. So what are these abilities that are included alongside the character keyword? The first one and the simplest one is Lone Operative. While this isn't strictly for character units, a lot of non-character single entity units have this ability. It is most often seen on single model character units. Things like assassins or sneaky genestealer cult characters will have this Lone Operative. There are also many effects in the game that duplicate the effect, that basically do exactly the same thing as Lone Operative, but don't necessarily use specifically that ability. You can talk about things like Scout Sniper's camo cloaks, making them untargetable from outside 12 inches. as well as some attached character abilities. The Phobos Librarian or Thousand Sun Sorcerer both give a lone operative style effect to the units that they are attached to. Now, one thing that you'll often hear players say is that their units have lone operative, and this is usually because of these effects. That is basically identical, so there's not really functionally a difference. In the future, we may see things that interact with the lone operative core mechanic specifically, but we don't have those right now. So right now, an ability that says a model can't target you from outside 12 inches and lone operative are exactly the same. Now, as I have indicated, the lone operative ability specifically forces models to be within 12 inches of the model that is a lone operative to be able to target with ranged attacks. If it is a character and attaches to a unit, which we will discuss in the next section, lone operative turns off. So you don't get lone operative unless you are a lone operative, which I guess just makes sense. The ability seems pretty straightforward, just forces enemies to be within 12 inches of you to attack you, but there is some nuance here, as with basically all rules in 40k. The first one is that the distance for lone operative is not a function of weapon range. So if you have an effect that increases the range of your weapon or allows you to measure range from a different point than normal, those will not affect your interaction with lone operative. The attacking model must specifically be within 12 inches of the target model in order for that attack to be successful, regardless of the range that your weapons are. In addition, measuring range and line of sight for attacks and measuring distances between two models are two separate mechanics. In this case, measuring range for attacks measures to a single model in the target unit from the model that is currently having its range measured from. However, measuring the distance between two units measures to the closest model in the unit. Now, the reason that this is relevant is for multi-model units with these lone operative style effects. So we can think about sniper scouts. These guys can't be targeted unless the attacking model is within 12 inches. However, that model that you are measuring to does not have to be the one that you measure range to. So you can, in some situations, measure your range to a model that is in your line of sight and farther away than 12 inches from the unit. However, then measure the 12 inches to ensure that you are able to target the unit to a different model in the unit that you don't necessarily have line of sight to. On top of that, the lone operative measurement works on a per model basis. So normally the distance between two units is measured from the closest models in the unit. However, in this case, each model in the attacking unit measures independently whether or not a unit is eligible to be targeted thanks to lone operative. So if you have half of your unit outside 12 inches of the lone operative character, despite the fact that half your unit is within, those guys who are outside 12 are not going to be able to attack them. They can, however, select a different target. They just won't be able to select lone operative models unless they specifically are within 12 inches of them. Now, as a little bit of an addendum here, there are some effects that add an untargetability or lone operative effect onto a unit during the attack sequence. These are usually reactive stratagems. Genestealer Cults and Chaos Space Marines both have good examples of these, and there are some weird corner cases where a lot of these rules will come up. The first one is that if you have an effect like this that is applied in response to an attack, it actually works retroactively on that attack. So if you measure your range and line of sight to a unit, the defending player then uses a stratagem that makes that unit untargetable outside 12 inches, you will then have to select a new target for any models in your attacking unit that are not within 12 inches of that defending unit. Because thanks to Rose commentary, the trigger actually looks back into the targeting of the attack and actually works basically when the attack gets targeted. This is the case for any effects that trigger just after a target is selected, so it can work in some other situations as well. And again, because these can work on larger units, this distinction that the model has to be within 12 inches of the lone operative or the untargetable unit, but doesn't necessarily have to be within 12 inches of the model to which it is drawing line of sight, will come into play pretty often, especially in the case of things like Genestealer Cult that have huge units that are very voluminous and cover a lot of the table. So that's all the weirdness about the lone operative ability. Let's dive into the leader keyword, and this is going to be the meat of this video and where most of the confusion about character models arises. The leader mechanic is a new one in 10th edition and allows some characters to be attached into some units. This is a function of the leader ability, an ability on their datasheet, and if they have it on the back of the datasheet, it will inform you what units the leader is able to join into. This all happens during the battle formation step of each game. So importantly, you don't have to note which units your leaders are joining in your list, and you don't even have to attach them to the same unit or to a unit at all if you don't don't want to. There are some instances where keeping your characters separate from units is actually useful, especially in situations where your opponent has such powerful ranged attacks that they would be able to kill the unit and its attached character in one go. And if you don't need the buff that character is giving the unit, then you don't even worry about attaching them. Now, generally speaking, the leader mechanic has a limit of 1 character per unit. Only a single leader can join into a unit, but some characters have very specific criteria in order to attach alongside a second. One good example of this are Space Marine captains and lieutenants, where a lieutenant can join up with a unit that has a Space Marine captain already attached. However, regardless of the criteria specified on the datasheets, there is a hard limit of 2 characters per unit. If you have special abilities that allow you to join multiple leaders into a unit, that is still capped at 2, even if you could normally have more than 2 attached based on the wording on their datasheets. Now, once the leader attaches to the unit, there are a bunch of specific terms that the rules use when dealing with these units. When the units combine, they are referred to as an attached unit, which is treated as a single unit for basically all rules purposes. The only exception is when one or more of the units within the attached unit amalgamation is destroyed. The character is then referred to as the leader and is considered to be leading the unit. This is important for unlocking a lot of special abilities that characters may gain when they are joined into a unit. The unit the leader is joined into is referred to as the bodyguard, and models inside it are considered bodyguard models. Now, when an enemy is making attacks against an attached unit, the bodyguard's toughness characteristic is always used as long as there are any bodyguard models remaining. So even if the bodyguards are wildly outnumbered by much more powerful and difficult to kill characters within them, as long as the unit is attached, the toughness characteristic of the bodyguard is still used. When the defender assigns saves in response to an attack targeting the attached unit, they cannot assign saves to characters. However, there is a little bit of nuance here, because you specifically can't assign saves to character models within an attached unit. And it is the case that some character units may have non-character models within them. Some good examples of these are command units like Marnius Calgar or Celestine. These are powerful epic hero characters that also have some non-character bodyguards with them. When they attach to a unit, all 3 models in that unit attach into the unit that they're going into, but only the character itself actually has the character keyword on its datasheet. This means that those, I can't use the term bodyguard, but the guardian models within the character unit are treated essentially as part of the bodyguard unit for the purposes of taking damage. You still use the bodyguard unit's toughness, but those guardian models can be assigned saves. One thing to keep in mind on the table is that because the character in a unit can't be assigned any damage until the bodyguard is destroyed, it's important to keep your character safe when you're expecting to take damage. What you don't want to do is put the character model in a unit out in front, because then all your opponent has to do in order to kill the entire bodyguard unit is to draw range and line of sight to that character, because they are guaranteed to have the character still in range and line of sight after they've attacked, even if you killed some other models in the unit. However, if they were bodyguard models in front of them and they measured range and or line of sight to those models, you could then assign saves to those models and kill them and potentially pull other attacking units out of range. Once the bodyguard unit is killed, its excess wounds from the attack are then assigned to attached characters, just like they were normal models in the unit. But again, this is at the controlling player's discretion, so if you have multiple character models within the unit, you can potentially be assigning them to the less valuable characters. Now, as I mentioned before, the attached unit triggers any rules that would trigger when either of its components are killed. This includes things like secondary missions or some unit abilities, so when the bodyguard units are destroyed, these will trigger at that point. Any persistent effects or abilities like Oaths of Moment or stratagems that were active on the attached unit are then transferred over to any characters that are then orphaned from their bodyguard. And these remain active until they expire, despite the fact that the character is ostensibly a separate unit. Now, characters in bodyguard units aren't literally invincible. Weapons with the precision ability can defeat them before their bodyguard units are killed. When a precision weapon wounds an attached unit and the attacking model has line of sight to any characters in the unit, you can assign the saves to one of those characters that you have line of sight to. The line of sight requirement is important because it also affects melee attacks with the precision keyword, which can be relatively common, as we'll discuss later. Melee attacks are normally line of sight agnostic, and it does mean that keeping characters far back out of harm's way can defeat even the most powerful snipers or duelists. It's important to note too that the assignment of these wounds is actually irrespective of the weapon range or the range of the attacking model's melee. So you can assign precision attacks to a character that you would not normally be able to measure range to. As long as it's in your line of sight, even if it's at the far back end of the bodyguard unit and there's 20 models in the way, you can still assign damage to them. Now, if there are multiple character models in a unit, the attacker can allocate precision attacks to any of them that are within line of sight. This is chosen when a wound is scored with that precision weapon. Keep in mind that if those character units have non-character models in them, like the Guardian models that we discussed earlier, those would still be applied to the character of the unit, not the non-character models within the character unit. So you couldn't assign it to the Gemini Superior in Celestine's unit, you could only assign it to Celestine herself. Now, as I mentioned before, precision can be relatively common. It's actually available for use in every army in 40k via use of the Epic Duel stratagem. This is a 1 CP stratagem used in your fight phase and gives any character precision on all of its melee attacks, making really powerful combat characters also good at killing other characters. Now, like all the rules in 40k that we've discussed on this channel, there's a little bit of nuance with the precision rule. Because attacks in Warhammer 40k are resolved sequentially, you can have attacks targeting characters resolve first. If the character then dies before the rest of the attacks are resolved, you can force those access attacks back onto a unit. Now, technically, these should be slow rolled out, but generally speaking, if you tell your opponent the order in which you would like to resolve them, that's going to be fine. It actually gives more information to the opponent and actually gives them a little bit of a benefit.
As a little bit of an additional note to losing characters out of a unit, if the character is applying a bonus to the unit while they're leading it, that bonus will actually continue to apply after the character is destroyed until the end of the attack sequence, so all of the attacking units attacks that destroyed that character. I saw this one misplayed recently and wanted to throw that note in there. It is included in the rules commentary.
In addition, if you have the devastating wound or any other ability to inflict mortal wounds with an attack, and you successfully do so with a precision weapon, you can assign those mortal wounds specifically to a character in your line of sight as if they were a precision attack. Normally, that's not how mortal wounds work. They're not assigned exactly as a saving throw. They just sort of work similar to it. But in this case, mortal wounds are functioning like a precision attack. Now, note that in all of these cases, if the character model is not killed and is then still part of the bodyguard unit, it could have wounds floating on it, but it still can't be assigned wounds from further attacks. Whereas the normal attack sequence requires you to assign saving throws to models in your unit that are already wounded, the leader rule overrides that and says that you cannot assign those wounds to a character in your unit. This is also potentially the case if you have a character model with a hazardous weapon. Characters suffer a slightly less of an impact from hazardous weapons, only taking 3 mortal wounds on a failed hazardous check, like other non-vehicle, non-monster models. So with either precision weapons or hazardous weapons, there is the potential to have multiple wounded models within your squad. If you have a model who's taken a damage from a precision weapon, this is a unique case in 10th edition, but it's not too difficult to keep track of because those characters can't normally be assigned attacks elsewhere. And with that, those are all the mechanics for character units in Warhammer 40k. I hope that this video clears up some of the questions that you have about these units because they are incredibly complicated. Big thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video. Let me know down in the comment section if you have any questions about the character keyword that I can potentially answer. Big thanks as well to the Magnet Baron for supporting the channel. Also, all the folks who support the channel in other ways, like YouTube channel members, Twitch subscribers, and patrons that you can join at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise. I love all you people. You're great. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.